How's it going, everyone? This is Dixon of the Ultimate Gamer. I'm logging on. And it's Halloween month. And I thought I would go over a quickie. An obscure game from the 8-bit era. Kid Dracula from Konami. How did I discover this game? Well, off of the Castlevania Anniversary Collection that was released on all platforms in 2019. Well, as you can tell, Kid Dracula plays nothing like Castlevania. But Kid Dracula is still somewhat part of the Castlevania series. Well, how is that? Well, after all, both Kid Dracula and Castlevania are from Konami. They're both side-scrollers, well, different types of side-scrollers. And they both have fictional horror-themed characters in common. But Kid Dracula is nothing like Castlevania. You're not a Belmont going through dark scenery stages of Dracula's castle by going through hordes of his minions that are referenced to classic Universal horror films or the British Hammer horror films. So what gives? What's Kid Dracula all about? In Kid Dracula, you're not either Simon or Trevor using a vampire killer whip to slay monsters. You're portraying as Kid Dracula using fireballs to slay monsters. By the way, since we're on the topic, I would love to address the Castlevania Anniversary Collection really quick. The collection is awesome. It has all my favorite Castlevania games growing up. But the drawback is they could have added more Castlevania titles. But I'm here to talk about one game off of this collection, Kid Dracula. Released in 2019? Now wait a minute, that cannot be right. Well, the compilation was released in 2019, but this game alone wasn't. It can't be. But when you start up the game, it says the game was released in 1990. The same year Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse came out. But I get what they're saying. Back then, Kid Dracula was only released on Nintendo Famicom. So obviously, Kid Dracula never got an official North American release. That was until 2019 on this compilation. But let's take a closer look into Kid Dracula to see if it was a hit or miss, and how well it holds up. First of all, what's the purpose of Kid Dracula? And second of all, what connection does Kid Dracula have with Castlevania? Well, Kid Dracula is the self-proclaimed Demon King that's been waking up from a long sleep. Once he realizes the demon Glamoth wants to challenge Kid Dracula. Since obviously, when Kid Dracula is sleeping for a long time, Glamoth stole his throne right from under him, and Kid Dracula must go through hordes of Glamoth's minions to get his kingdom back. When you start up the game, you watch an intro of the stars at night with a sleeping half moon. You notice that Kid Dracula was on his castle roof, watching the moon and stars glaze. Then you see a big star that come across the beautiful dark sky to struck that moon. Then the moon transformed itself into a big face of Glamoth, who looks like a giant evil sun. Which reminds me of the evil sun from Super Mario Bros. 3. Anyway, Kid Dracula then throws a fireball at Glamoth's face, and Glamoth disappears. Then the night turns to broad daylight. Then the title menu appears. And even in daylight, Kid Dracula still stands in the same spot. And there will be levels that Kid Dracula will be going through daylight. I guess, for a vampire, Kid Dracula must be immune to daylight. Obviously, I don't see any connection with Castlevania, and so far this game already doesn't make any sense. And sometimes, it doesn't always have to make sense. Well, we'll see. Then when you start the game from the menu, you see Kid Dracula get out of his coffin, and now it's time we get down to business. Now, the gameplay starts, and if you're familiar with Castlevania games, you can see the graphics on characters as well as the HUD interface, including the health system for Kid Dracula, doesn't resemble Castlevania. But in some ways, some of the backgrounds kinda do. It's just the gameplay itself is totally a different story when comparing the gameplay to Castlevania. All Castlevania references aside, let's focus on the damn Kid Dracula game. The graphics are decent. The gameplay is smooth in some ways. The music is pretty cool. Kid Dracula's attack style is okay. Kid Dracula's regular defense is a fireball. And Kid Dracula does have special abilities. Some are special attacks and some are special tricks, which one at a time can be unlockable after each stage. But since when does Dracula start to throw fireballs? What I know about Dracula, or any vampire for that matter, is that he preys on his victims for blood by draining their blood, or turning his victims into vampires under his wing, or he hypnotized people or animals into his ghouls. So far, Kid Dracula doesn't match any comparison with the Bram Stoker's novel or with any of the Castlevania games. But of course, this game's actually a parody, more likely. And when you waste your enemies with a regular fireball, you don't accomplish anything. But when you waste an enemy with a super attack special, they drop a coin. Just make sure you get the coin before it vanishes. And what are the coins used for? Well, I'll tell you in a little bit. You also start out with 3 lives and 3 health points, but the health points can be upgradable to 5 health points, as well as replenish. And this game does have continues. I'm not sure if they're limited or not. I don't think that really makes a difference because, to be honest, I wasn't playing this game the old way, like I would back then. Because I don't have the time to, or the request to do so. So I constantly use save states at some points of the game. Because playing Kid Dracula legit can be a real torture. Even more torture than the actual Castlevania games. Speaking of Castlevania, some of the level designs in Kid Dracula are showing some recognizable scenes that we witnessed in Castlevania games, which I already mentioned. Though I also mentioned that the game does not play like Castlevania. Kid Dracula actually plays more like the Mega Man games from Capcom. Now the first level boss is taking on a ghost who looks like a clan member, but when you hit him with a few hits, he cries and walks away. Then the big ghost comes out, and once again if he gets hit enough, he'll do the same. When you pass stage 1, you unlock the humming spell, and this is the spell I use the most throughout the remainder of the game. And if you get enough coins, you go for a mini game to try and win extra lives. Which didn't mean much, because I've been using save states instead of paying attention to these pointless mini games, so it didn't matter to me. Maybe if I was playing the old way, that would be something, but nope. And the first level is pretty easy. Yeah, they like to start you out slow. But from that point on, it gets more difficult to the point where you want to pull your head out of your head. Or maybe out of your ass. Well, maybe if you're playing this game back in the day. With this game, I always had to save a bunch of times. Because if you fail, you have to repeat the same process over and over again. And I've been saving and loading throughout the entire game instead of doing it the old-fashioned difficulty way. Call me what you will from using save states. It's just that it's time-consuming, and I have other projects to work on. And there are 9 levels altogether, and then you eventually fight Glamoth and defeat him. Kid Dracula recaptures the throne, and then the credits roll. Then the message came along saying, "But be careful, a man with a whip may come fight you." Meaning either Trevor or Simon or Richter with a vampire killer whip, perhaps? So in conclusion, I would have to say Kid Dracula does have some Castlevania references, and in some ways it is loosely part of the Castlevania series. But was Kid Dracula a missed opportunity for North America? I would say not really. Is Kid Dracula good as Castlevania? Well, I would say Kid Dracula is not a bad game, but definitely does not match any of the replay value of any Castlevania games. Kid Dracula is decent, and I'm glad it's part of the Castlevania Anniversary Collection as an extra, but the game itself is not great. However, I recommend the Castlevania Anniversary Collection regardless, especially for your curiosity if you want to play Kid Dracula game yourself. That's all I have to say. And now I have a feeling that a dark cloud is looking over me. And Kid Dracula probably wasn't 100% justified about what I said. Though I wasn't trying to be negative for this review. I think I better get some garlic around my room as of now. Thank you all very much for watching, and this is Dixon of the Ultimate Gamer Realm logging off.